Hello, hello, and welcome to Workshop Wednesday. It's actually September the 19th, 2018, and that makes today Talk Like a Pirate Day. This is the best image I could find for that. So if talking like a pirate happens to be your thing, you're going to actually love the workshop today. That's not true. Maybe. I don't know. At least it's your day. Let's do that. The workshop today, hopefully you will also love. It's all about beyond the basics this time. So a little bit more for those of you who have a little bit of experience with Google Analytics and you're looking to level up. So that's kind of where we are for this particular workshop. That's what the beyond the basics are all about. And this one's all about using advanced segments in Google Analytics. So we'll go ahead and move on. My name is Chris Mercer. I do go by Mercer, and I am the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io. Welcome to the workshop. If this is your first Workshop Wednesday, you can find our content on such platforms as Digital Marketer, Conversion Excel, Social Media Examiner, Seriously Simple Marketing, and others around the web. We like to cover the 5 pillars of measurement marketing to kind of give you some context for why we are doing this. So there are 5 stages to becoming a good measurement marketer. The first is you must learn to plan. That's pretty simple. It's really asking the 3 questions. Really, what questions do you want to know? That's the first question. Number 2, what information will you need to get in order to answer those questions? And number 3, this is the most important part of planning, you need to ask, what am I going to do with those answers? What actions actually am I going to take based on how those answers come through? So that's the planning stage. At that point, you move into building, and that's where you're using tools like Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics to actually help make sure that your measurements are all being stored in the proper places. And then we move into reporting. Once you got everything being stored and built, then you move into reporting. And maybe you're using the built-in reports in Google Analytics. You're going to see some of those actually today. Maybe you're using Google Data Studio and you're pulling in segments from different audiences into Google Data Studio. You're going to see how to create those segments today. So that's kind of what reporting's for. Once you have your reports, then you begin to forecast. Because once you have an idea of how things have been working, you can surprisingly do a pretty good job of forecasting what's going to happen in your near future. And then once you begin to forecast, not only what's been happening, you don't know just what's been happening, but you start to forecast what's going to happen or how you think it's going to happen, then you send out traffic and optimize. Now, how do you know where to optimize? Because you're going to compare what you thought was going to happen to the actual results in your measurement marketing. That's what's going to tell you what's working and what's not, and that's where optimization comes in. And you might set up split tests using Google Optimize, something along those lines. So those are the 5 pillars of measurement marketing. Now, with all of these workshops, it's really important because these tools can be overwhelming. There's a lot to Google Analytics. There's a lot to all these different tools. So just focus on grabbing one thing, one new idea, practice that, and then you come back to these workshops, watch them again. That's why we have them, okay? So just grab one idea, one new thing, practice that, then come back and rewatch it, and you'll get something else from it. Without further ado, beyond the basics, using advanced segments in Google Analytics. So we are going to jump right in, as we are wont to often do here. So here's our Google Analytics, and we are in the Google Merchandise Store account. And as we go through, looking at Google's Google Merchandise Store demo account here, we can see some basic data, right? So we've got number of users and revenue. I can click through, get some audience details around maybe some of the demographics that are coming to the site and take a look at that. I can even go into some traffic attribution if I wanted to. So we can come into audience or the acquisition reports, go to all traffic, check out the different source mediums that are sending us our traffic sources, and all of this is great, right? We can get some really good information from here, but it's all in aggregate. So this is like the all of the data. It's Google Analytics saying this is everything that I know. It's all users that are coming to the site, and we can tell because of this up here. So whenever you see these little widgets that are up here, these are the segments. So you can actually create segments in using Google Analytics. And this is why it's powerful. Here's why you want to do that. Because data in aggregate isn't really all that useful. It gives you a very general trend of what's going on, but it really doesn't help you to answer specific questions. So for example, in fact, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to go into audience reports. I'll show you a really quick example of how to do this. We're going to go to demographics. I'm going to click on overview. So now I'm looking at all of my users and I see, okay, I've got a average age, a little younger here. It's kind of looks like mostly male, a little bit female. So we've got those coming in. So I have a rough idea of all the users on my site. But what happens when we do some segmentation? Well, let's take a look. So first, I'm going to go into the system segments. Now, every single one of you watching this has access to this little feature. You click on segment, you come into the system. These are all the built-ins. And this is the ones that we're going to show you first. So first, I want to organize it. And I want to say, well, it's all well and good to know demographics by user, but let's see if my organic traffic, how that compares to maybe my paid traffic and maybe to people who are not buying. See if there's some sort of pattern I might be able to learn. Now, again, I don't know that this is the case, but this is a really good way to explore and answer some of those questions. So I'm going to go through here and we'll set that up and we'll click apply. So now I've got all of my segments set out. And I'm going to show you a pro tip here. This took me years to learn. Watch this. I don't want this all users here anymore. Okay, so I'm going to just pull that aside, drag it slightly off. Bam, that goes away. And now I've got my 3 segments. I'm actually going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see all these in one place. There we go. Okay, so I've got my organic traffic, I've got my paid traffic, and I've got my non-converting users, so people who did not purchase on the site. And what I would generally look for is again, truth is in the trend, power is in the pattern. We're always looking for that. It's how you analyze numbers in Google Analytics. Just look for the trends and see if you find some insights. Generally speaking, from an age group perspective, I don't know that I see that many insights other than, maybe a little bit less here on what is paid traffic. But generally speaking, it's kind of the same pattern in terms of age group. But then you come down here and you do notice that female is quite a bit bigger here. It's about 40% female coming in from our paid traffic. And it doesn't really match what these other traffic sources are saying. Now, what does that mean in of itself? Maybe something, maybe nothing. This is just an idea to get some more questions here. But it might be something where, hey, there's paid traffic. There's a female audience out there that's clicking on ads more so than coming in through these other ways. Are we actually getting them to buy anything? Okay. Well, guess what? We can create a segment for that. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to drag some of these off here, make a little bit of space. We can have up to 4 segments at a time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to keep our non-converting audience. But then what we're going to do is we're going to add a segment and say, okay, I'm going to show you a new segment here. So this is how you create a brand new segment. So I want to see female. Okay, so we see gender female, gender male, or unknown. I'm going to say female. So I want to see demographics of females who buy. So I'm going to come into our enhanced e-commerce, and I'm going to say revenue per user is greater than 0. We'll keep it nice and easy. So if those users actually converted at a user level of greater than 0. Now you'll notice over here, this automatically shows you how many people have actually filtered down to the segment you're currently doing. So if I, again, took this out, notice what happens here, how it's 2,100 users. Well, that's 2,100 users during this date range that currently match this one condition, which is demographics, in this case being female, that we have set up. Then when I come in here and say, well, yeah, but then I also, in addition to being female, I want to know people that spent money, which means females who spent money greater than 0. That's our revenue product here. Now it drops down to 42. Okay, so quite a bit of a difference. But again, that's only during this particular date range. So we're going to go ahead and say this is buyers female. And then guess what we're going to, lovely spelling, there we go. So buyers female, we're going to send that or save that. And then guess what we're going to do? If you said buyers male, you are correct. We're going to compare male to female, easy for me to say. So let's come in here and I'm going to go ahead and copy this, okay, showing you all sorts of cool ways to use this little feature. So now we can copy it. And instead, I'm just going to change. So my e-commerce is already in there. Everything's already in there. I'm just going to flip it out and say I just want males instead of females. So we're going to say buyers male. Okay, so we'll click on this and let's see what else we can learn. So we're going to go down here and we can see we've got a number here. And I'm going to expand it out in a date range to get a little bit bigger of a sample size. It is kind of important. You don't want to really base a segment off of 42 people, if you're going to make a major marketing decision. But let's take a look and see what we've got or what we can see here. So now here's all my non-converters, okay? These are people who haven't purchased at all, so I can kind of see that. And then I've got people who have purchased that are male and people that are female. Okay, and again, here, do I have some interesting information? I don't really know. I don't really think that I do. There does seem to be a little bit of a spike in older males that tend to purchase. Gender is going to be exactly what you would expect, right? 100% female, because that's the segment, right? So I can see that. But then let's go through and dive a little bit more into the things that they are buying, what their values of all this come down to. So the coolest thing about segments, one of the coolest things, there's lots of cool things about segments. I can geek out over segments. I've got these 3 segments all set out, right? I'm going to go ahead and drag this off because I really just want to deeper analyze my buying audience to see what they're buying. So in this case, I've got buyers female and I've got buyers male. And I'm going to scroll down. And I'm going to jump into our conversions reports. I'm going to go to e-commerce and let's go into product performance and see what we can see there. So in the product performance reports, this is all of our e-commerce transactions coming through, but guess what? It's automatically segmented. So these segments carry through to all the different reports that are in our Google Analytics. And then we can see buyers male and buyers female. Now, in this case, this is interesting because I actually would expect that we would see some transaction details. Let's see what's coming through here. Especially if these are buyers, we should have revenue greater than 0. So let's see what would be causing that. I'm going to go to the overview and take a look. See ability. There we go. So affiliation buyers male, so $90,000 in revenue, about $82,000. 25 transactions buyers female at about $32,000 in revenue. 41 transactions at about 27. So this is interesting. Again, maybe, but I definitely have more buyers male than female. Okay, and that makes sense because this particular site seems to skew kind of male. But the average order volume, right, of the number of transactions, the amount they're spending, even though I seem to have a lot of them coming through, the average order volume is a little lower, right? So it could be, and again, this is why I say could, because I wouldn't come in here and make snap decisions really, really quickly. But I'm looking at patterns, right? I don't get too caught up in the numbers, assuming that I've already kind of trust but verified that the numbers are reporting a useful truth. But I will come through here and see, okay, I'm definitely, I see lower transactions coming through, or in transaction count here. This is our internal promotion. But these are transaction counts. So about half of them, half as many from female as male. And then I look at the average order in terms of the campaigns coming through, and it's a lot lower, right? Almost twice as low. Here, basically the same pattern. Males not spending as much at one time as females are. That's pretty interesting, right? That's pretty interesting. So now, would I want to make a decision to say, hey, guys, we can make a case, right? We can make a case that potentially I can go out and say, hey, team, I've got a paid media campaign that's happening. It turns out that there are a lot more females on that campaign. Now, maybe that campaign is targeting females. Maybe it's not. I'm not entirely sure. Right? We don't know the ins and outs of that campaign. But we do see that compared to the other main traffic sources, organic and the other traffic sources they had coming in, that the paid traffic was skewing more female. Okay, the paid traffic was skewing more female than the organic was. So that's interesting. There's some interaction there. And if you follow it through to, okay, what are the results of the females who are coming through? Now I can segment this down even further and say, okay, females from paid traffic, do they spend more or not? But right away, I just sort of went back and said, well, that's interesting that females are coming through paid traffic. I wonder how they might differ in buying behavior than what males do. And it turns out, it looks like they're spending almost twice as much. Right. So even though they buy, in terms of quantity, the number of transactions are half as much, but that's probably because, if you just think about it, they're all numbers, right? There's not a biggest percentage here. But if we could up that percentage and maybe create a campaign that's more targeting women, like how that might be a huge thing that Google could take advantage of here, right? Maybe they could have even accessories. That might even be something you go to product development on and say, hey, listen, do we have products that are really geared to the audience? Right. And I can come through here even further and say, okay, I want to see, an audience of, in fact, let's just do that. I'm going to edit this a little bit. And I'm going to say, I just want to see, I'm going to take out our transaction because I'm 100% just want to see, this is going to be female only. And I'm going to take out our buyer's male because I want to dive into maybe what products they're buying. Right. And is there a difference between products that women buy versus men, right? Entirely possible. And this is all the sort of stuff that we can learn from our Google Analytics. I'm going to drag this out real quick here. And hopefully you're seeing all of the different interactions that you can have with advanced segments and how to actually set these up. So I'm going to come down here. Let's look in product performance. At this point, we should see, nope, it's not going to let us. And that is probably just because it wants to keep us safe from identifying individuals. So it's going to keep everything at a transaction level, which makes sense. So I guess that makes sense. We're not going to be able to learn too much about product details, at least here. But overall, right, again, I can, if that average order volume, if I did different dates and date ranges and I found that average order volume for females was twice as much as males, that's interesting. Like, I think that might be an opportunity that we can take a look at. So, I'm pretty impressed with that. In fact, I still want to see if I can get maybe a larger data size since there's just not a lot of transactions. I'm thinking Google's kind of saying, hey, there's not enough here for me to actually give you details. And there may not, right? That might be something else that we can pull out. Maybe in our CRM, we have information like that. Who knows? But it is interesting to say, just from an overall perspective, if that average order volume ends up being twice as much as males, there could be something there, right? Because they tend to spend a lot at one time. They're not spending as many, right, in the raw numbers, but that's also because they're not as big of an audience in terms of number of users. So there could be an opportunity there. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, and this is more for funnel tracking and sort of direct response stuff as we go through. So if I click on this, go to new segment, there's all of these little built-ins that you can play with to your heart's content. Typically, I don't actually use any of these. I live down here in the conditions and sequences. So conditions, and I'll give you a perfect use case. For those of you who are familiar with UTMs, you can track, you can pull in a segment of your campaign, your medium, your source, your keyword, which is your UTM term. But what's missing here? Right? Those of you might be thinking, oh, what happened to the content, right? There's UTM_content. That's a traffic tag that I'm using. Well, I can't segment it by here in traffic sources. I'm not exactly sure why they made that decision, but you can't do that. However, if you go to campaigns and you type in content, it is sitting there if you type it in correctly. There we go. Oops, add content. Okay, there we go. Advertising ad content. So I can say if ad content contains, and then whatever. Now I can segment by ad content. So anything, and this is why I live in conditions, anything that is in a Google Analytics report, anything, custom dimension, custom metrics, they won't be in here, but they will be here. So anything that you enter into your report will show up here. It's an absolutely amazing tool. And this is where personally, if I had to make a recommendation, you can kind of get used to some of the things in here, but this is pretty restrictive. I would not live here. I think it's cool to kind of poke in. As if you're just starting with segments, you can kind of look around really quickly, like, hey, show me male versus female, the stuff that we just did, just kind of get used to what's there. But that's really it. After that, take off the training wheels, jump into this, because this is where the real power is, and this is really where you want to spend most of your time, because you're going to know what you're looking for. And so you can type in any dimension, any metric, and the way that this works is you've got filter by sessions. You can say include or exclude, but you also have sessions versus users. Now, this is the most confusing part about segments. So I'm going to do my best to explain this little feature here. If you say, I want to load up sessions where my ad content contains test, okay, just as an example, which probably will be nothing in this case, because I'm sure that Google hasn't really done that. But let's say, for example, they did. If I said during this date range, April 1st to September 18th, I want you, Google, to just show me sessions, that is visits, right? Sessions where ad content contains true. Okay, that's it. Then it will show you that. It'll actually show you a segment of the visits, of the sessions that actually happened during this date range. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If I said users, so I flip it to users, and you would think, okay, I want to see users who came to my site during this date range, right, that had this ad content test. Well, that's not actually what Google is going to show you. And this is where, again, it gets a little tricky. If you're asking it for users, what it will show you is it will kind of look in the user records, because Google's tracking its behavioral database. It's tracking all of these different users and their actions. It's going to go find all of the different users first and foremost. It'll find all of the different users who have ad content that contains test, right? Who satisfy that condition. That's the first thing that it does. Then it says which of those users showed up on your site during this period of time. Okay. Now that is very different. It's very subtle, but it's very different than sessions. So sessions says, okay, forget the users. Let me just go look at the visits and see which visits had this in common. And then I'm going to show those during this date range, right? If they ever had this in common, the visits during this date range, we're going to put that in. If I flip it to users, what could happen is maybe a user had this condition, but they did this in December, right? But it's in their record, right? It's in their record. And then they visited the blog later through some other completely different thing and just happened to visit the site during this date range. Well, even if this particular thing happened in December, it doesn't matter. They're still an active user during this date range, and so it would show users. So I know that's a little tough to wrap your head around, and that's one of those things where it is tough. You gotta play with it and practice it, and you'll see the difference that's coming through. In fact, I'm going to do one more explanation on this because it's such an important thing. So let's just do a real one here. I'm going to do let's just do page title. Perfect. So we can see real numbers. All right. So first I'm going to flip it to sessions, and this is kind of the default. This is why it's the default, by the way, because sessions is probably what you're really looking for in most cases. So this is the number of sessions which include the page title containing home. So any visit where the page title contained the word home is going to show up in this segment, assuming they visited the actual session occurred between this and this, between April 1st in this case and September 18th. So that is 144,000 users, but 200,000 sessions, right? Which is fine because users have more than one session. It makes total sense. Now, if I flip it to users, all of a sudden I have 89,000 users, okay, with 149,000 sessions. So 89,000 users. Again, that's weird. You would think, okay, well, it should basically be the same thing, but it's not because it's calculating it differently. It's now saying, well, how many users which had page title contains home in their user record actually were active during this date range? Okay, and that's why it looks so off. So you need to play with that. Most of the time, the question you're asking is probably around what happened in the actual session itself, in the actual visit, in which case you want this. If you're asking a question, hey, I just need to know if this happened to users at all, ever, right? And those same users were active during this date range, that's what this is. So again, it's a little different way of thinking about it. Most of the time, you're going to be playing with sessions. And if you have any questions over that, especially those of you that are Academy members, please ask. Like that is a hard thing to get your mind around. And really the only way to do it is practice. Build, try different variations of it and go from there. Now, in conditions, you can also say and or. But these are very binary. So it's like, oh, the page title contained home and they came from this traffic source and they were male and they had a purchase of greater than 0 or transaction count or whatever, or bought the specific product, right? Whatever your segment is, you can do. And you can see there's so much back here. Anything you want is back here. Anything, all the metrics, all the, this is all the number stuff, like all the metrics is the number stuff, right? So metrics are back here, the dimensions are back here, everything you sort by, everything that is in analytics that you've ever seen in an analytics report can be pulled into a segment. So you have all those different details, right? Sort of the general rule you can follow there. But conditions are yes and no. So they either apply or they don't. This is a very, very cool feature of advanced segmentation here. And this is sequences. And the way to think about sequences, they're kind of look the same, right? They're kind of the same. In fact, if I say, okay, I'm going to do a page where the page title, I think it was, page title contains home. And right now we had 144,000 users that were here. Some of us could do that same thing. And you should see our numbers not changing if I got that right. There you go. Numbers stayed the same. Why? Well, because in this case, the condition is the same as the sequence. Step 1 being this is the same as this. Like they both kind of match. But what's cool about this, in fact, I'm going to take this out because I'm going to show you another pro tip here. How do I get rid of a condition without actually doing this? I could just click this, but if I'm in the sequence and I'm going to get rid of my condition, I'm just going to click this, right? So that's it. My number, again, stays the same. But I've got this sequence. So the way that you think about sequences is you think about these are conditions in a period of time. So in a certain order, which is what's powerful about it. Because I can say people who saw my homepage, and then let's say title again, we'll do page title. And we'll say this is, then they went to the YouTube, right? They went to YouTube page with Google Merchandise. So of those users, how many actually did that? You'll notice this number goes down, in this case, pretty dramatically. Went from 144,000 users to 9,000 users that actually did this step. And then is followed by, and let's say we have a little e-commerce purchase. Oops. Actually, you know what? Let's do a product purchase. So we'll do a product. Type that in and we'll kind of look around. What do we want here? Product under e-commerce and then contains YouTube. I think they have products that have YouTube in the name. They might not. Let's find out. Yeah, they seem to. So, and then it's followed by a product that contains YouTube, right? So we can kind of get more and more narrowed down. Let's just see if this is actually showing me what I want. I'm always trust but verify my numbers because I don't know. I like to have a healthy disrespect for my results. So per session, let's see, revenue equals in the session. Let's say it's greater than 0. Let's see what that shows. This should show us some buyers. There you go. It makes a little more sense, right? That first number of YouTube is probably showing me something I wasn't thinking that I was looking at. But in this case it is. But here's my buyers. So people that went from home in the same session, include sessions where they went from home, then they were followed by, doesn't mean they immediately did that, just means somewhere in the session. I could flip it and say, oh no, they went from home directly to YouTube, right? I could make that a step. In this case is followed by, which means later in that same visit, in that same session, they saw the YouTube page. And then in that same session, there was revenue, right? In that case, greater than 0, which means there was an actual revenue transaction. And there's other ways you can do revenue, transaction count or whatever. But there's all the details, right? So now I can say, okay, I've got 321 buyers. So this is an actual sequence of individuals that I can now, I've created a segment that says people that went to the home page, to the YouTube page, to the category page, which I assume that is, down to the actual per session of 0, right? So now I've got revenue buyers. that saw that page in the same session. And you can do lots of stuff with that. I might want to remarket those. I might want to create an audience, right? It's pretty powerful to be able to do that, but you can actually create a remarketing audience from your segments. And you can say, oh, hey, Google Ads, I want you to go back to all those people who just bought YouTube merchandise and talk about this brand new YouTube thing that I just came out with, right? Here's our new YouTube mugs or whatever. Like if I was Google Merchandise Store, that might be something I could do. Or I could do the opposite, right? So revenue per session where it was 0. And we could say there was no revenue. And then I can go retarget and say, hey, you visited some YouTube stuff. Here's other YouTube stuff you may have missed, right? If you want to build a little retargeting audience out of that. So we have that. So there is an immense amount you can do with segments. And this is really kind of even though it is a bit beyond the basics, because this isn't just looking at reports, this is really starting to slice and dice and asking questions. And it can feel like you're going down a rabbit hole. I will admit that. There's so much back here that you do need to play around. I think you do actually need to jump down the rabbit hole for at least a little bit. Just take a look and see what's down there. Play around with the different segments, ask a bunch of questions. Don't try to find answers right away. I think that's how you start with this tool. You just kind of learn the tool, learn how to drive it, so to speak, right? You want to learn how to drive Google Analytics and learn how to drive using advanced segments. Create a bunch of them, create some sequences, learn the differences between sessions and users. That same thing is here. Okay, so learn those differences and play with that. Then, once you have your segments, you can actually start doing things with them, like importing them into spreadsheets. We use them for funnel tracking. We, in the Academy, those of you who are Academy members, if you check out the passive funnel tracking system, it is built off of segments. We create all the segments in Google Analytics. All those get imported into spreadsheets, which automatically get passed into either spreadsheet reporting or Data Studio reporting. If we went for funnels, you can actually connect Google Analytics segments directly into Data Studio now. If you want to see a certain segment of individuals and create a report that was there to answer specific questions, because again, that's why you create these Data Studio dashboards, so that you can actually get very, very quick answers. Segmentations is how you do that. So play around with it. And again, you've seen a lot of the pro tips that people don't know. Even people that have been using segments for a long time have no idea that you can actually, let me cancel out of here, that you can actually drag and drop these to get them kind of off the screen, which is cool, right? Like that's kind of neat. That's just you that gets to do that. Other cool things about segmentation, we talked about sequences. You've got different actions. This is also based on your permissions. We're using the demo account, Google Analytics demo account, but there's more permissions. You can edit certain segments. You can create, you can share, you can create retargeting audiences, assuming you have the conditions. In fact, let me show you real quick in our account so you can see it. Oops, that's not what I want, but it'll get me where I need to go. Oh, no, that's Tag Manager. Sorry. Backing up. Okay, all demo accounts. And let's go into segmentation here. So we can still in segments. I'm going to drag and drop this off because this is, I'm going to show you the different options. So we have edit, where I can edit this segment. I can copy it. I can share it. I can build an audience. That's how you build an audience for retargeting purposes. Again, for Google Ads, and you do need to make sure everything's connected, but as long as it is, you're good. Or of course, remove that segment so it's totally gone. And then you can select other segments down here. Other things you can do with segments is you have all of your custom segments. Everything you've created will be here. You've got shared segments, starred segments. If you have a particular one that you really, really like, you can star them, and then they will show up in your starred section here. And of course, the selecteds are the ones that are currently active, so you can do that. And if you know which segment you're looking for, because it's really easy to get hundreds of segments back here. Very, very easy. So when you're creating your segments, if you know which one you're looking for, right, you can go into all and you can say, oh, I just want to see, AdWords stuff, and just type in. And as you do that, it'll pull up the one that you're looking for. So you have that option as well. So I think that's about it. Oh, also the gallery. Let's talk about the gallery really quickly. If you want inspiration, I wouldn't necessarily just copy and paste these blindly. But if you want some inspiration as to like what these are showing, you can come in here. You can search for whatever you want, pop in other people's, kind of learn from their results. Again, some of them are a little old back here. But coming back here and pulling these into your own Google Analytics and just sort of taking an idea of like how they look, because you can edit them. You can sort of see behind the scenes of how they were built, and it gives you an idea of what other people were looking for, which might be useful, might not be. So that's sort of how that whole thing works. So that's it. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here when it comes to Google Analytics segments. Hopefully you got at least one new thing from that. Maybe it's the idea that segments even exist. Maybe it's that you've been using segments, but you know you can use them in a certain way. Maybe you've never played with sequences, and it's time now to do that if you haven't done that. Maybe it's the sessions versus user thing and trying to really grasp your way around that, because that is a big deal and can change what you think you're looking at one thing, but really Google is giving you something different. So it's something like that. But there's lots of different stuff back here. Practice. Come back, rewatch this, and you'll pick something else up. All right, now if you need a better way to know your numbers and you are ready to make the next jump, check out the Measurement Marketing Academy. It's https://measure.tips/start. We'll get you there. You'll learn all about it. Measurement Marketing Academy, we've got a ton of support, lots of different workshops, plenty of archives, tools, tips, tricks, live Q&As, the Ask an Instructor support system. It's definitely not for everybody, but it is phenomenal if you are part of a team and you really need to level up your skills, or if you're in an agency, freelancer, maybe doing this work for other people. It's definitely something that would be very, very useful to you in our humble opinions. Go ahead and take a look at that. If you are already a member of the Measurement Marketing Academy, thank you, of course. And remember, today, actually this is September 19th, assuming that you're watching this on that day, at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we actually have the Academy office hours open Q&A, so you can jump on. It's kind of a perk for the Academy members. It's included in their membership. Every week they can jump on with an instructor. They can share screens. We can just have a chat. It's just really a discussion, voice to voice. Imagine that. Where you can chat with an instructor, get help on whatever you need. So Academy members, if you have not already, make sure you check your email for the links. It's in Facebook, in your Facebook group as well. It's also inside the Academy. So if you come into the Workshop Wednesday section in the Academy, you will see a link off to the side. If you're a member, it'll be lit up for you there. So you can click on there and it'll get you into the meeting room where we can chat. So looking forward to chatting with those there. Otherwise, really quick programming note, next week's topic is a strategy session. We rotate different topics every week. This week was a little bit more for the advanced. Last week was for the beginners. Next week, it's for the strategists. And we're going to be talking about traffic attribution and how it works. So how Google Analytics decides and determines what particular results gets attributed to which particular traffic source, how Facebook does it, right? Like, we're going to learn all about that. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Definitely, if you're focusing on strategy and traffic attribution is one of those things you need help with, you will love this particular workshop. So looking forward to seeing you there. And of course, if you are not part of the Workshop Wednesday list officially, make sure you do that. Measure.tips/WW. It is completely free, and it sends out notifications on the different topics and occasional perks. Plus, you get access. It'll send you a login to the member site as well, so you can watch the workshops there. So that's that. I will go ahead and move on. Thank you so much. Pleasure, as always, for being able to join us for Workshop Wednesday here at MeasurementMarketing.io. This has been Beyond the Basics, using advanced segments in Google Analytics. Thanks again for watching this workshop. We'll see you on the next one.